Hello and welcome to my NCAA men's basketball Thursday non-top 25 predictions. I can't really do a review yet because it's not Thursday, but I kind of want to keep doing content. So I was like, let's just do some non-ranked games that are good teams. They're just not in the top 25. I'll just find certain games, whatever, we'll do that. So we got like 7 games on our hands. You should like and subscribe. You should tell me video ideas because I have no idea like what else to do other than basketball and the Super Bowl next. That's it. So let's get straight into it. First off, we have ASU at Washington. So first off, let's talk about ASU and how they have played this season. Me personally, I think ASU is extremely overrated. Even though they're my team, and I shouldn't be hating on my team like that, I think we are extremely overrated. We start off the season with a 3-point win against Tarleton. Then we beat NAU, and then we lose in overtime at Texas Southern. That's a terrible loss because Texas Southern has like 6 wins right now. Then we beat VCU at home. Then we beat the crap out of Michigan. That looks like a better win. That looks like a better win day after day. Then we beat the crap out of Grambling by 31. Then we beat the crap out of Alcorn State. These are easy matches. But then we beat Colorado at Colorado by a point, which came on a last-second three-pointer. Not very good. Colorado's good. I think they're very underrated. But if you want to be considered good, you can't be escaping games like that. Just like how you escaped Stanford at ASU by 4. We then go on to beat SMU. Pretty good. SMU sucks. We beat Creighton in an invitational. That's a good win. All right, that's a good win. We beat the crap out of San Diego, and then we just get smoked. Once we enter the top 25, we get smoked by San Francisco by 37 points. We lost 97-60 at San Francisco. That was just like a little realization. Then we lose by 9 to U of A in a game we personally should have won if our team could get our shit together. That's why I'm kind of like ASU's a little overrated. We are very inconsistent. Then we beat Washington State. To me, that looks like a good win because Washington State can shoot. That's like Washington State can shoot and you outscored them. That's pretty good. Then we beat the crap out of Washington. Well, it was a much different ball game, but ASU just let him climb right back in, won by 8 points. Then we beat the ever-loving shit out of Oregon. And then we barely beat Oregon State. It's like we can't beat the bad teams. We play UCLA and lose by 12, but if you watch that game, you know that game was ASU's all the way through, and we choked. We choked harder than, we choked harder than something gay. I don't know. USC beats us, we ultimately played like absolute horse shit. And to me, what I see with my own eyes is that ASU's super inconsistent. We can barely beat the bad teams, and we barely walk away from games with the win. And then when we go up against actual competition, that type of play style catches up to us, and we lose. And that's just not going to cut it. Now we are going to travel onto the road to another team that I think is pretty overrated, Washington. Washington starts off the season beating Weber State, then beating North Florida, then beating Utah Tech, but then losing to CA Baptist by 9. That's a terrible loss. I have no idea who they are. Then they bounce back and beat Fresno State, beat St. Mary's in overtime. That's not bad considering St. Mary's is currently ranked right now. Beat Seattle, and then you lose to Oregon State at Oregon State. That is a horrible loss. Right now, I'd say Oregon State is the second worst team in the Pac-12. Get smoked by Gonzaga, beat Cal Poly by 6, whatever. Beat Idaho State, Idaho State. And then get your butt kicked by Auburn. Then proceed to get your butt kicked at home by USC. Then proceed to get your butt kicked even more at home by UCLA. But then they lose by 3 points to U of A. But I'm not going to give that to them because I also think U of A is extremely overrated. Then they lose to us in a game that they were getting beat up in. Then they beat Stanford at Washington. Then they beat Cal in overtime. That's a terrible win. Even though that's a win, Cal is the worst team in the Pac-12. You should not be letting that get that close. Beat Colorado by 3, and then get smoked by Utah. So these two teams are very overrated teams fighting each other. And with that being said, I feel like ASU, coming off of 2 bad losses, should be able to relatively take this easily, even though it's at Washington. If ASU decides they want to play actual basketball, they will be able to take this game pretty easily. I mean, if ASU plays with the potential that they have all season long, they'd be able to be a top 10 team right now. We just can't pull our shit together, can't hit shots, whatever, like you name it. It's just a Bobby Hurley curse. This is what ASU's done. Even though we have very good teams with extremely good potential, and we just can't pull our shit together. SMU at Memphis. Memphis, I feel, they should be ranked. They should be ranked. And I will explain why. They are currently receiving a singular vote to be ranked right now. And that is absurd. That is crazy. Because, let me explain why. So Memphis starts off the season with a win at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a pretty good basketball school. I think they're a little underrated. But then they lose to St. Louis by 6. That's just a bad loss. They beat VCU pretty bad. Seton Hall beats them by a point in an invitational. Then Memphis beats Nebraska. I mean, considering how Nebraska has played, that win could be determined as, good or bad. I mean, good or whatever. Then they beat Stanford by 8. I mean, again, another game where that can be considered good or meh. Then they beat North Alabama. They beat Ole Miss. That, to me, looks like a good win. They beat Little Rock. And then they beat Auburn, who at the time was a undefeated team. They beat them by 9. That's a pretty good definition game, if I have to say anything about it. And then they lose by 3 at Alabama. That, to me, is like, whoa. Dude, Memphis is maybe for real. Because right now, I think Alabama is competing for the best team in the league. Right next to Houston. I think Houston has the upper hand, but I definitely say Alabama comes into a close second, and I think the committee agrees with me. And Memphis nearly beats them on the road. That is crazy. Then Memphis beats Texas A&M at Memphis. That's a good win. Texas A&M, even though their record may not be that nice, I believe Texas A&M is a good basketball team, and they're just underrated. They just had a couple bad games at the start of the season that made them lose their respect. Memphis beats Alabama State. Then they beat South Florida. Then they lose to Tulane. I couldn't tell you whether I think Tulane is a good team or a bad team, because they're in this weird spot where they're like ASU to me, but I haven't watched Tulane play, so I can't really determine. Then Memphis beats East Carolina by 10. Then they lose in double overtime by 3 to UCF. That's a pretty good game for me. That looks like competition. That looks like both teams were playing good ball, and UCF they're not a bad basketball school. Then they beat Temple. Whoa. Temple's like number 2 right now in the conference with a win over Houston. Temple's not a bad basketball school. And then you beat them at home, or beat them at Temple. That's a good win. Beat Wichita State by 10. Beat Cincinnati. Boom. And now we are here in our next game. Let's talk about Southern. We don't even need to talk about Southern Methodist, actually. I mean, they're bad. They don't really have any standout wins to me. So, with that being said, I think Memphis should take this win pretty easily, and if SMU makes it close or wins, great for them. I still think Memphis deserves some respect and should be ranked. For only receiving 1 vote, that is ridiculous to me because of how they have played. Some of the teams they have beaten. Every team, to me, it looks like a lot of teams have taken some just pooper losses. And I feel like that should not stain teams. The committee should look into the schedule, the way they played the games and whatnot. And honestly, if you look at that, Memphis is like Memphis is pretty good. I mean, on paper, they're pretty good. Barely losing by 3 to Alabama is impressive. At Alabama, too. Impressive. But let's get on to the next one. Iowa at Michigan State. A very balanced match here. I'm going to say that Michigan State's going to take it by a singular point and not that high scoring of a game. Because both of these teams, they often put up quite a bit of points. And both teams have decent wins on both ends. And some pretty pooper losses. Let's talk about Iowa. Iowa starts off beating Bethune. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Then they slaughter NC. A&T, I don't know what the fuck that is. We'll just say NC. Beat the shit out of them. Beat Seton Hall, slaughter Omaha, and then beat Clemson. Well, right now, Clemson is ranked, so that looks like a better win day after day. Lose to TCU at TCU. TCU is currently number 11, so I don't blame you for getting beat that bad. Georgia Tech, they beat Georgia Tech. They lose to Duke in a pretty bad match. 12-point loss, but, it was a invitational. Duke was number 15 at the time, and personally, I don't think Duke is terrible. But then they beat Iowa State, and they beat them pretty good. They beat them by 19. Iowa State is currently, number 12? That looks like a very good win. Lose in overtime to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a highly respected team right now. They may not be doing that good in the conference, but they were getting ranked, and they nearly beat Kansas. And then Iowa slaughters some pooper school. Then they lose to Eastern Illinois. That's their pooper loss. Then they lose to Nebraska. That's not a pooper loss. That's not really excusable. Lose to Penn State at Penn State by 4. And then beat number 15 Indiana by 2. Beat Rutgers. Beat Michigan. Beat Maryland. And then the Northwestern Iowa game is postponed, and then get your butt kicked by Ohio State. So it looks to me like Iowa can play good ball when they want to. Iowa can play good ball when they feel like it, and that's sort of the spot that I feel like Michigan State is in. Michigan State starts off the season beating NAU, and then they lose by a point in an invitational against Gonzaga, who at the time was number 2. That's pretty impressive. Then they beat Kentucky in double overtime by 9. So they just took off in the second overtime. Beat Villanova by 2. Lose by 11 to Alabama. And then beat Oregon by 4. Beat Portland by 1. And then lose to Notre Dame. All right. So a little inconsistent. Lose to Northwestern. At Michigan State, not that nice of a loss. But I do think Northwestern is a pretty good basketball school. Beat Penn State at Penn State, beat Brown, beat Oakland, beat Buffalo, beat Nebraska, beat Michigan, beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin, who was ranked at number 18, and then lose to Illinois by 9. And then lose by points to Purdue. Beat Rutgers, lose to Indiana by a lot. So to me, it looks like Michigan State has some more defining wins. And they look like from just the teams that they have played that they put up more competition. But to be honest, I believe this game could go either way. I'm going to give the upper hand to Michigan State because of the games they played and because they have home field. But this game could be interesting. This game could be interesting. Colorado at Oregon, 2 teams that I feel are a little underrated. Just a little, though, not too much. So Colorado starts off a little weird. They beat UC Riverside, then they take a pretty bad loss to Grambling. But then they beat Tennessee by 12 at Tennessee. Tennessee's currently ranked number 4 right now. That's a good win for Colorado. Being one of their 3 losses and by 12 points, dude, that's a pretty good win. But then they lose to UMass by 3. But then they slaughter Texas A&M by 28. That's a huge win. So 2 games that you look at Colorado and you're like, damn, dude. But then 2 games that you're like, what the hell just happened? Then they lose to Boise State. What the hell? Barely beat Yale. Okay. Like, come on, Colorado. Pick and choose. Lose to ASU, but like I said, by last second 3. So it's like, Lose to Washington at Washington. That doesn't look that good. Beat the crap out of Colorado State. Beat North Alabama. Beat North Colorado. Beat Southern Utah. Barely beat Stanford at Stanford. Pick and choose again. That could be weird. And then lose at Cal. That's an unexcusable loss, garbage loss. You cannot lose to Cal. They're the bottom feeder of Pac-12. Can't lose to Cal. That's a gimme win. You should not be losing to Cal. But then they go on to slaughter Oregon, our current matchup, at Colorado, though. Then they beat the crap out of Oregon State. Then they lose at USC by 7. And then they get their ass handed to them by UCLA. And then they lose to Washington again at Colorado, but then they beat Washington State. So right now, currently, this team is an inconsistent team that shows a lot of potential. Again, I feel like a lot of these teams are. They have good wins, but then they have pooper losses. Let's talk about Oregon. Oregon beats FAMU, Florida A&M. But then they lose at home to UC Irvine. That's a trash loss. Beat the crap out of Montana State, lose by 10 to Houston at home, at Oregon. You get your butt kicked by UConn, okay? Oh no, it's an invitational. Get your butt kicked by UConn, not good. Lose by 4 to Michigan State, that's all right. Beat Villanova. Then you beat Washington State, lose by 9 at UCLA. Beat Nevada, beat UC Riverside, beat Portland, and then you lose to Utah Valley at home. What? How are you losing to that? Like, you come on. I don't know what Utah Valley is, but to be Franklin, I don't want to use the play style of the other team. You cannot lose to Utah Valley. Beat your rival, but your rival happens to be just absolute horseshit at this sport this year. Get your butt kicked by Colorado, but then bounce back and beat Utah on the road. Get slaughtered by ASU, but then slaughter U of A. Slaughter Cal, but then lose at Stanford. So again, two teams that I feel like have a lot of potential, could be very good teams, but they're just losing bad games. With that being said, I actually wanted to give it to Colorado, but I mistyped, and I was like, that is a sign to give it to Oregon. I mistyped it. I think I wanted to do, I don't remember. I think I wanted to do 56 to 62, but I did it the other way, and then I was like, damn, nah, we got to change it back. I didn't mean to type 65, but something made me. So I gave it to Oregon. Hopefully that was the right decision. And these two teams are all these teams that I'm talking about right now, if they can figure out how to pull their shit together and start playing good basketball, they got it. They got it. I'm going to say 50 times apparently. These teams they showed it. They can play good basketball. Colorado beat Tennessee and slaughtered Texas A&M in invitationals. Oregon slaughtered U of A. These teams they have the potential. The skill is there. They just can't put it together. And if they could figure out how to do it, they could be very good March Madness contenders and whatever their championship is. And our last game, Utah at Oregon State. Not going to talk about this one much because Oregon State is pretty bad. Even though it's at Oregon State, Utah's got a name to make for themselves. I think currently they're number 2 in the Pac-12 with the win over U of A. And Utah definitely wants to keep winning. They don't want to lose because it doesn't look like UCLA is going to lose anytime soon. Their only loss so far is to U of A, and I'd say U of A is the best team, the second best team in the conference, if I'm being perfectly honest. Even though I think U of A is overrated, I still think they're one of the better teams in the conference. So Utah cannot afford to lose, whereas Oregon State, even though they would like to beat them, I just don't think they know how to play basketball. Oregon State at the beginning of the season, they played Duke to 4 points in an invitational. I thought Oregon State was going to be one of the better teams. Psych, you thought. They are trash. And, that's it for this. That's it for these games. Again, like and subscribe. If you have any ideas for videos, go tell me in the comments. And, that's all for me. Adios.